Thanks so much, Mark. It's so nice to be here with all of you. An early Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for your presence, for showing up for each other and for yourselves. We are heading into Passover very soon. And if you can share the source sheet for just a moment. Many of us are familiar with the invitation that the Haggadah offers. Bechol dor vador, in every generation, chayav adam, a person is obligated, lirot et atzmo, to see themselves ki'ilu, as if, hu yatsa, they left, or they were leaving Mitzrayim. Before we sit today, I want to explore how this directive, these practice instructions for the Seder, might inform our meditation, and how mindfulness might speak to the way we actualize this line at our Seder this very difficult year. One way to understand this voice of the Haggadah is, and if you can take off the screen sharing so we can see each other, please. One way to understand this voice of the Haggadah, originally from the Talmud, is that we read our particular story, our specific moments of oppression, of feeling stuck, of habit, of pain and isolation, through the universal archetypal story of the Jewish people, the Exodus. Doing this can bring some comfort and connection and context in moments when we're just feeling isolated, like it's only happening to us. Historian Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi suggests that even the most terrible events are somehow a little less terrifying when viewed within the old patterns, rather than in their bewildering specificity. And I think many of us can relate to the sense of the confusion of these bewildering times. We get a sense of this is not just happening to us, and this is not just happening now. We do something similar in our mindfulness practice. We soften the focus on our separate individual self, and instead notice how our specific thoughts and feelings are really basic, universal human experiences. Rather than my pain that was caused by this person or that set of circumstances, I might let go a little of the ego's drama and simply be with pain or fear as it moves through me. The Haggadah's invitation allows me to see myself as if I have left Egypt. I can use my imagination to remove myself a little from the particulars of my story as I am transported to another place and time, into the great story. I can imagine and feel into a profound sense of liberation that might seem impossible in the current circumstances of my own life, or certainly of world events. And in doing so, I create a neural pathway to hope and to transformation that I may then be able to access when I come back to the particulars of my story. And back to our source sheet for just a moment, Rachel, please. The great medieval philosopher Maimonides offers a slight variation on our probably familiar verse of Bechol dor vador. So this is the on the first page. So up a little bit, yeah. So the second source from the Mishnah Torah, from Maimonides, the Rambam. He says, Bechol dor vador, chayav adam, in every generation, a person is obligated, leharot, to show themselves, leharot et atzmo, ki'ilu, as if, hu be'atzmo yatsa, they themselves went out from Egypt, ata. And this is not ata with an aleph, which means you, it's ata with an ayin, which means now, right now. In this version, in Maimonides' version, liberation is not an ancient memory happening to other people or something that we talk about at the Seder, but it is happening ata, now, in real time. We rest our awareness in this very moment, this situation, and this directly felt sensation. Perhaps liberating our awareness in the process, which the Hasidic commentator Me'or Einayim suggests is in exile when we're in Mitzrayim. So perhaps you've had an experience similar to mine. I've had this experience in the spaciousness of retreat primarily, of listening to a teacher talk about a quality of mind or heart, taking in their words and imagining the state that they're referring to. And it's sort of like listening to. And then suddenly my awareness shifts or expands. And in that moment, I feel into what they are describing in my directly felt experience. For example, they may be talking about opening the heart. And instead of just understanding this state in my mind, my heart will actually feel open. Perhaps you have this experience sometimes in this space. So that is the ata that Maimonides adds to this going out from Egypt, this now, it's happening right now. And the Zohar, the primary book of Kabbalah, uses a phrase that means, but now, aval hashta in Aramaic, to introduce this shift from abstract thinking about or imagining to experiencing. Most often in the Zohar, it is this esoteric divine drama that is suddenly happening right there in the very moment, accessible to all. So for example, Aval Hashta will introduce a passage in which the Shekhinah is being adorned by the very words of Torah that are being spoken in the moment. Our words are creating something in the divine that is actually happening in that moment, Aval Hashta. In the depth and power of Hashta, new perspectives and insights arise that could only arise in that moment. So it's not a journey backward in time, it is happening right now. Like Hashta, the now that Maimonides adds to the Haggadah's invitation draws forth new interpretations of our ancient archetypal story of liberation. Each of us might actually feel some expansion, transformation, or freedom directly through the words and rituals of the Seder, viscerally. Rabbi Michael Copeland reads in our verse a hint of this embodied experience. We were studying this verse for a paper that we were writing together a few weeks ago, and she noticed in our Chivrita that Maimonides twice uses the word atzmo, which means themselves, their otet atzmo, but it can also mean bones, etzem, like in the story of Genesis. She writes, the power of the Seder is that it is an immersive, embodied experience. We feel the story coming alive in our bodies, in our bones. One way this is accomplished is that we don't merely tell the story, we ingest it. Through the bitterness of the maror, the tears of the salt water. And Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote a book on trauma and the body, says physical self-awareness is the first step in releasing the tyranny of the past. We go through the gateway of the body. So we begin our sit by becoming aware of the sensations in our body. We allow them to be exactly as they are, and to change in their own time. So let's sit for a moment with this. If you've been sort of listening, rest your awareness in your body, perhaps feeling your feet on the ground, the chair supporting you. Invite your shoulders to soften, broaden, feeling some expansion in the body. Allowing your eyes to close softly or have a gentle gaze. Beginning with awareness in the breath, in this moment. We read in the Torah that God breathed into Adam, and it's happening right now. Right now. Sitting with the breath, letting the mind settle. As the mind becomes, awareness becomes more spacious, less constricted, more stable. You may want to open to whatever is most apparent in your direct felt sensations. Let's sit with this for a few moments. And I'll bring in another piece, but just settling in, resting in this breath, and then the next. Or if it's more available to you, a particular sensation in the body, not needing to change it in any way, just being with it right now. And noticing, is there a change that happens all on its own? Some transformation, liberation. If a strong emotion arises, you might become curious about whether there is a place in the body where that emotion is showing up. Whether a tightness in the chest, or the belly, or the jaw. And if so, leaving the story behind and just bringing your awareness to the directly felt sensation. Allowing it to be exactly as it is right now. And being open to any change, any softening that may arise. And we'll be sitting for another 8 minutes or so. through this gateway of awareness of the body, you may find at some point in your practice that you enter into another state in which awareness of the body falls away. And the sense of separation between self and other, self and the divine softens. Similar to the moment at Sinai that the Midrash describes as completely, intimately silent. And if this arises for you, just be with it. Knowing that the anchor of your direct sensory awareness is always available. And in this last minute of our sit together, you might want to wiggle your toes or fingers or stretch in some way, coming back to movement in the body from that place of stillness. Very gently. Another understanding of our verse: in every generation, a person is obligated, lirot et atzmo, to see themselves, to see their essence. As we sit, the hope and the prayer is that more of our essential, unique self is able to be seen, is available to us, and is available to do the work of healing that is needed in the world. Can you hear that song?
When you hear that sound, thank you so much, Margie. Beautiful practice. Let's seal that practice and seal our week of practice by offering an opportunity for those of you who are mourning or observing a yard site to recite the mourner's Kaddish, the prayer for those who are in mourning, or if it's your custom to join in it, you're welcome to do that. And for the rest of us who are not in mourning, to stay present, create a minyan of support and comfort for those who are. So thanks to Rachel Hugot for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. You can put the name or names of those you're honoring in the chat now or after you recite the Kaddish. Rachel, if you can make it just a bit bigger, folks, that'd be great. And if you are reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit. And you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalma divrach yibutei miyamlich malchutei b'chaye chon b'yamei chon b'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman karib v'yimru amen. Shmei Rabba me'arach me'olam ulamei amen. Barach v'yishtabach v'yita'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei b'kedusha v'richu La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata v'amiran ba'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabanu shanaya v'chayim aleinu v'chol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Useh shalom b'mamav Uyaseh shalom alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru
Amen. Amen.
Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. Wishing everybody a sweet and restorative Shabbat. If you're leaving us now, of course, everyone's invited to stay on for some conversation with Rabbi Margie Jacobs about today's beautiful practice and teaching. And a reminder that next week, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith will be leading us all week in a series to help us, as this sit today did, prepare our inner lives for Passover. This year, maybe more than ever, practice that we need. And looking very much forward to it. Just a reminder that the practice is extended by 15 minutes Monday through Thursday, and then we're going to be on hiatus until the day after Pesach. Thanks to Rachel for holding our space and to Rabbi Margie Jacobs for leading us today. And as always, if you have a question you'd like to put, please put it in the chat, preface it by writing question in all caps. But also feel free to share reflections or observations, anything you noticed from our practice today. Thanks, Margie. It was really just beautiful and appreciated so many aspects of it. I don't think you touched on this, but maybe you did. So if you did, I apologize. But I was wondering about, well, first of all, let's just step back. That line is, which everyone, if they don't know it, should know, which encapsulates the whole purpose of the Seder, is really a practice instruction as you used it today. That why do we have a Seder? So that we can bring our awareness to the fact that we're not studying history. This is not nostalgia. I mean, it may or may not be any of those things, but more than that, it's about reenacting or imagining and engaging in a practice that enables us to grow in awareness of a process, of a dynamic that is happening not just this moment, but every moment. And that's core to Jewish tradition and Jewish spiritual practice. Yetziat Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, it's God, it's every second, every breath that's happening. So you quote that part from the Haggadah where we're taught that we're to see ourselves and then use that Maimonides, which I don't think I ever noticed that, about showing ourselves as if. So the focus was on the now part, the atah part. What do you make of that? That kind of, I just started wondering, my mind started drifting off and wondering, what does that mean to show, and what does that add to seeing ourselves versus showing ourselves as if we're leaving Egypt?
Thanks for the question, Mark. So I think for me, really the first step is to see ourselves, to, as we do in our mindfulness practice, to really witness who we are in our essence. And in doing that, we allow that part of ourselves to come forth and come out, if you will, and just be bigger and more available as we interact in the world. And so that it's not, on the one hand, it is seeing the universal nature of this process of liberation, of the places of stuckness, right?
Mhm.
And there's real value in that, as I've said, but also each of us is needed in our uniqueness.
Mhm.
And so bringing that forth as strongly as we can into the world. And we actually do that, this article that Michael and I wrote, Rabbi Michael Copeland is also, has been very involved with IJS for many years. We talk about the many different Haggadot that have come out. And Marcia Falk talks about this in her recent Haggadah, and that it's not just this monolithic thing, but the uniqueness of each of us, whether it's, an LGBTQI Haggadah or a women's Haggadah or a Hogwarts Haggadah, whatever it is, like that comes through in the Seder too. We bring all of ourselves, and that's needed. Yeah.
Thanks. You invited us, and it would be great actually to look a little bit at the, this Andrew wrote, and it's true. It's like this curated source sheet, which you only went into a little bit.
Yeah.
Is like fine wine. There's a lot of real gems here, including the quote from Bessel van der Kolk that physical self-awareness is the first step in releasing the tyranny of the past. And you invited, really for most of the set, inviting us to bring awareness into the body and sensation. Can you be a little bit more specific about like what that involves in terms of what we're being invited to notice, and if there's a progression? Because the text goes in the Haggadah, the text goes on to say, now we are here. Next year we'll be in the land of Israel. Now we are slaves. Next year we'll be free. So the now seems to anchor us in the constriction, right? And not, but there's a movement towards the movement towards liberation isn't now. Now we're in constriction. So maybe you could say a little bit more guidance about how to do this in a way that doesn't get us stuck in the constriction or whatever residual trauma resides in the body.
Great question. So first, I just wanted for everybody here, Rachel, would you mind sharing the source sheet again, the beginning of the second page, the halach ma'aniyah, just to clarify what you're pointing to, Mark. So the halach ma'aniyah, when we say this is the
It
bread,
might be. You got it, Rachel. Okay.
This is the bread of our affliction. At the top of this page, it uses this language of hashta that I was talking about from that the Zohar also uses, and says hashata hacha. Right now we are here, and in the future we'll be in a different place in Israel. And hashata avdei. Right now we are enslaved in some way. In the future, Lashana Haba'ah will be free. So it takes these two pieces of what is happening right now. Thanks, Rachel. We can unshare so we can see each other again. What is happening right now in our direct experience, giving space for that. And as I was saying at the end of the meditation, that through that gateway of just being what is,
Mm-hmm.
there is sometimes a grace that we may know from our mindfulness practice where everything falls away. And it's like that moment of Sinai when nothing stirred, when just the aleph, the unvocalized aleph, was heard. And it's a moment of grace. We can't make it happen. Right? We can't will ourselves into that place of freedom. We can only be with where we are right now. But through that being with where we are, we might open to a more expanded, more free, more connected state. And I think part of what's important to say about your question, Mark, is that the quality of awareness that we bring to our direct experience, to the places of tightness or pain, is really important. So if we are in a state of kotzer ruach, if you will, like a state of tightness, a shortness of breath, or just tightness of mind,
agitated,
agitated,
right?
distracted, then it's a time to be with our breath, with something that is easily available to us. If our breath that is regular and rhythmic on its own, that doesn't have a lot of charge. And in sitting in that, wait for the awareness and the mind to settle and become more spacious. And when that happens, then what we're bringing to our direct experience, to our moments of pain, might be healing rather than re-traumatizing. If we come in to something that's really difficult with a tightness, it's just good. It's just going to create more difficulty for us. And so bringing that spacious awareness to these places of direct sensation, and then not trying to make anything happen. Just being with and seeing things that might get more tight, they might get less tight, they might move, and we can't predict how they're going to go. But generally, for the most part, what happens is there's some softening.
Yeah. And I think, just to add on to that, or just elaborate maybe on what you're saying, I think is that you're describing a compassion, holding that constriction with, when spaciousness is one way of expressing it, compassion, and using the RAIN acronym. The end there is the way Tara Brach uses nurture, but it is holding it in a loving place, holding one's woundedness, constriction in a loving way, as opposed to a constricted, judgmental, self-blaming, shaming way. We only have a couple of minutes, but there are a couple of questions that I think we probably should address, which is, some people are saying, why, is this taking the Jewish people or the Judaism out of Passover? Isn't Passover about the birth of the Jewish people? Isn't it about the birth, of our tradition? And I think the answer there is yes, it is. It is. This particular practice, and what we tend to do through IJS, of course, is focus on the spiritual dimension of that practice, which is both particular to our people and also to some extent universal. It's right. This is liberation. The Jewish people don't have a monopoly on this. This is core to who we are, our historical experience, and our spiritual orientation. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. So I was saying at the beginning, going into the story, putting ourselves in the particular story in the way that Yerushalmi talks about in his book Zachor, it's really important and it's really valuable. And we're able to feel into that liberation through the narrative, through the characters that are in that story, in a way that we wouldn't be able to if we just said, okay, let's experience freedom. The story matters, and it's powerful. So I don't want to take away from that at all. I just think it's also this other piece of what is my particular experience and what is the universal human piece of this. So it's all of it, and it's cultivating a consciousness that is spacious enough to hold all of that.
Right. Lori's question touches on this too, because Lori wrote, she's fully appreciating the attention to the body, the senses. At every moment, my question is about how to integrate that when we are being fully present for another without distracting from the connection with and attention to them in the moment. The analogy of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first aside, how do we fully be present, hineni, for both another person in full compassion and deep listening, and also hineni for ourselves and our body senses? I guess I'm hearing that question through the lens of what you were just saying about in a way, particularism about universalism, and the premise here, the theory is that having compassion and presence for ourselves is part and parcel of being able to be present and having compassion for others.
Because the place from which we are listening and interacting with the other is more, it's a more heart-centered and self and body-centered place. We're bringing more of ourselves because we're creating more access to the deeper parts of ourselves. Rabbi Sheffield, who's also been very involved in IJS, talks about stereoscopic consciousness, which has been a term that's really helpful to me, that we're able to both really be present with what am I feeling in my body as I'm listening to this person, and fully present with them. And for me, it's actually a deeper quality of listening when when the information in my body is available to me as I'm hearing another person.
All right, we're at time. I want to respect everyone's time, and thank you, Margie, again for this beautiful teaching, and timely and perfect to lead us into the Shabbat. And thank Rachel for holding our tech space today, and each of you for being here for your practice today and all week. A reminder about our podcast. We have 2 episodes dropping this week, Jewish Meditation for Everyone. Check that out. And that's one more way that you can engage and practice when we're not meeting live on any particular day. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone next week for our beautiful series with Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, which will, I'm sure, pick up on many of the themes that were raised today and this week. And wishing everyone a sweet, restorative Shabbat. And we'll see you on Monday, I hope.
Thanks so much, Mark. So nice to be here. And just an invitation to join me for the Ritual Well class. Rachel, if you can put that back in the chat. We'll be looking at the experience of presence and absence of the divine and integrating that with creative process, art making.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.